Hi everyone, I'm Amy Dugwell. I'm the president of the Bar and Advocacy Society, and I'm joined by Lord Stevens, Justice of the Supreme Court today, and we'll be talking about his career in law. Would you be happy to give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Oh, thank you very much indeed, Amy. Well, I was a barrister practicing in Northern Ireland and then was appointed to the High Court in Northern Ireland as a judge in 2007, and then to the Court of Appeal in 2017, and then to the Supreme Court in October 2020. So my background, my professional background is firmly based in Northern Ireland, and my education was firmly based in Manchester University. So
Very nice.
That's a very brief introduction.
Thank you very much. So what does your typical day look like as a justice of the Supreme Court?
Right. Well, it can be extremely varied. We deal with all the appeals in the United Kingdom. And we're the ultimate court of appeal, obviously, in the United Kingdom. But in addition to that, we have jurisdiction in the Privy Council to hear appeals from a wide range of countries, including, for instance, Mauritius, the Cayman Islands, and a number of Caribbean countries. So the legal problems that arise in those countries are extremely interesting, and the legal systems are a bit different. Well, can be totally different. So it's a varied workload in relation to both the Supreme Court and the Judicial Committee work. We give permission to appeal. So we consider applications for leave to appeal to the Supreme Court. And as a general rule, the point has to be one of a point of law of general public importance. So it's not a question as to whether the lower courts have got it wrong, but whether or not there is a point of law of general public importance that's going to affect the wider public. So a lot of my time is spent reading in for the hearings in the Supreme Court. If there is a hearing, or sorry, when there is a hearing, we meet beforehand to discuss the issues, and then at the end of the hearing, immediately, we sit down and discuss what the outcome of the case is. And we do that on a hierarchical basis. So the most junior member of the court goes first, expresses his or her views, and then we go around the table, a tour de table, discussing what the outcome should be. Then one writes judgments. But in addition to that, there's quite a considerable amount of work preparing papers for conferences, participating in outreach, participating in moots. We have a system of Ask the Justice where schools can dial in, join in by teams, and we have a general discussion with members of the pupils as to they pose questions to us, much in the same way that you're posing questions to me, and we answer those questions. So there's a huge range of things. We also meet up with judges from other Supreme Courts from around the world. So we've had a conference recently with the French, with the Irish. I was in Stockholm having a conference there. So a varied day work.
Really, thank you for that. So what's the main area of law that you would like to see change?
Well, that's a very difficult question for me to answer, frankly, because if I expressed a view about it, I would then have to recuse myself from any case in which the matter came up. So if I identified an area of law and said, look, there you are, that's an area of law, that should be changed, then I couldn't hear the appeal in relation to that. So I have to be a little bit more circumspect. I also have to be careful because I might be encouraging people to bring that issue before the court. And of course, I'd be expressing my own personal views, and they may not coincide with the views of my colleagues. So some litigant might be led astray, thinking that there was a really good point, and in reality, there isn't. So I have to be cautious about that. Of course, incrementally, we do change the law. Not in the way the legislation does it, but there are small, tiny adjustments which end up over time, meaning the law does change. But I can't tell you, unfortunately, about which particular areas would interest me. I can say, however, that we're going to have huge changes coming about, I think, through technology. So artificial intelligence is going to be a tool which is going to help us hugely, I think, in the future. It's not there at the moment. And I may, as an editing tool, I think it's improving and will be a great advantage to us. But as a research tool, as yet, it's not quite there. There are things called hallucinations. For instance, the president of our court, Lord Reed, was given a demonstration about how artificial intelligence could assist. And a question was asked of the particular software. And it came back with an answer. And it said, well, the answer to this question is as follows. And it quoted a case in about 1930. Well, the case wasn't in 1930, it was in 1879 or something. But the answer was essentially correct. The next question was, is there more up-to-date authority in relation to that? And it came back instantaneously with another case in the Supreme Court, in which one of my colleagues, Lord Hodge, gave judgment. It gave the name of the case, the citation, and also then quoted 2 paragraphs from Lord Hodge's judgment. The case didn't exist. Lord Hodge had never said that. There was no such case. So that was an hallucination. It was imagining what Lord Hodge might say rather than what had occurred. So I think artificial intelligence is going to assist us enormously, but at the moment is not quite there.
That's very fascinating. Thank you. So the next question focuses a bit more on the University of Manchester. So why did you choose to study here, and what did you enjoy about studying in Manchester?
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed my time at Manchester. There was brilliant academics teaching law. My tutor was one Brenda Hale, subsequently become president of the Supreme Court. I think she won't mind me saying that she reminds me of this fact every time I meet her. And so it was a really fruitful time from the point of view of learning. And well, there was also lots of social activity as well. And so going to see Liverpool, I'm sorry to say, rather than Manchester, play football was quite informative. Standing on the Cop stand and getting excited about football matches and so on. So it was a very pleasant time.
It's still very much like that. Back to your career, what piece of advice has stuck with you throughout your career? Well,
the people offer you lots of advice about all sorts of things, and I suppose I was Well, in order to get called to the Bar of Northern Ireland, you have to have your papers signed by a bencher, and of course the bencher won't sign it unless he's had a word with you. And so I asked the senior Crown Counsel at the time in Northern Ireland, who was a person called Brian Hutton, to sign the papers. It's a bit of a formality, but anyway, we had a nice chat beforehand, and he gave me advice. Well, first of all, he said, it'll be an interesting career because you're always chatting about what's happened that particular day and who said what and what court and so on. But also he gave me a bit of advice, and that was that when one's not busy, to read around a subject so that one can actually, so when one's under greater pressure of time later on, one has acquired the knowledge and can deal with it. And I suppose that's very sound advice. I hope that I followed it, but anyway. But there are different skills you need in different areas of the law, and that's not to say that people who don't have all the skills aren't going to succeed, but one has to appreciate, the different areas. For instance, obviously family law, one has to be seeking as best one can, especially family law involving children, for the best possible outcome. This is not a question of winning or losing. This is just finding a solution to a problem. In commercial litigation, it's a little bit more adversarial rather than cooperative, and in defamation proceedings, it's having some insight, perhaps, that you have to actually understand exactly what it is, why it is that your client is so concerned about what's been said. But my overall advice is read as much as you can, get as much experience as you can, either as a barrister or a solicitor or a judge at the earliest stage.
Thank you for that advice. I'll take that on board personally. So has there been any case that has inspired you or stuck with you over the years, and if so, how?
Well, yes, I was interested in that. I mean, it's a bit invidious actually to try and find, the outstanding case, and I suppose that I think in terms of the more recent ones rather than the ones in the earlier part of my career. We gave a judgment in a case called Umga, and that concerned the power of a court to order financial provision in relation to a foreign divorce. So there was a foreign divorce which was recognized in in England and Wales, and there's an ability for one of the parties to the former marriage to apply in England and Wales rather than in the foreign country for financial relief. Unfortunately, before the wife in this case applied in England for financial relief, and unfortunately, before the matter came on for hearing, the husband died. So the question arose. There were two questions basically. One was whether the legislation allowed a claim to proceed against the estate of the deceased husband. And the second was whether, if it did, it was a cause of action which survived his death. And the we decided on the proper construction of the legislation, that the Parliament didn't intend the cause of action, sorry, the claim to continue after death. But it provided us with an opportunity of saying that there's been a total sea change in the law in relation to financial relief. Looking back at the Victorian period, all the money belonged to the husband, and there was very little ability to obtain any payment at all. In essence, to a wife, and then going on to the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, the ability to make an award of maintenance to a former spouse was considered to be a matter of discretion. So a form of paternalism. We'll look after you. So that this is out of the benevolence of the judges, making sure that people didn't suffer, so that people were supplicants before a court. And we made it absolutely clear that that was now a totally outdated concept, that people had entitlements, and it was a matter of right and a recognition of their entitlement. So that's a change in social attitude, which we had an opportunity to endorse and make absolutely clear that that was the right way of addressing the matter. So that's one of the outstanding recent cases in the Supreme Court. And I could rattle on. I'm sorry, stop me if I'm going on for too long. But another one which we gave judgment in was a case called Bloomberg, and that was a question of privacy rights. So, was there a reasonable expectation of privacy in relation to somebody who's being investigated for a criminal offence? And we said that yes, on a the ordinary position should be that a person who's being investigated, as opposed to being charged with a criminal offence, has a reasonable expectation of privacy. Of course, that expectation could be overridden if there was a good reason as to why the investigation should be revealed. So those are two standout cases as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for the difference that you've made as well. So what is the greatest highlight of your career, following on from that question?
Yes, well, I suppose the answer is quite straightforward and simple. That is being sworn in as a justice of the Supreme Court. But I think the point to emphasize, however, is that enjoy the whole thing, because it's not a question of working towards a highlight. It's enjoying all aspects of it. Of course, there are difficult days, and of course, one has to be careful to treat triumph and disaster the same. So far as if you were as a practicing barrister, you mustn't get dispirited by losing, and you mustn't get too overexcited by winning, because those two imposters must be treated the same.
That's a wonderful outlook to have on life, and definitely something we could all learn from. penultimate question is, why did you choose a career in law, and what was it that interested you about this career?
Well, I suppose, I mean, I suppose I had an interest in history, and so I was always fascinated by how people had reacted in the past to various situations, and getting an insight into how they operated, what their lives were like, what their motivation was, and so on. So it wasn't too much of a jump to go from that to having an interest in law, which essentially is much the same thing. We have a huge variety of legal cases, and they stretch across the whole, the whole range of human experience, so I suppose it was a fascination with how law operates in those different spheres. But I suppose my overall desire was to have an opportunity of dealing with all these different problems and complex problems and intellectually challenging problems and a variety of work. And I was fortunate enough in Northern Ireland to get involved in defamation cases, personal injury cases, building contract cases, and so on. So medical negligence cases. So it was an interesting variety of work.
Thank you. And for our final question, what has been the biggest challenge in your career and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, well, there are lots of challenges. And did I overcome it? I'm not quite sure. I suppose one has to keep a sense of proportion about the sort of work-life balance. That's a major challenge, and I think that nowadays people have a better grip of that one. And sometimes that gets in conflict with a legal practice, because you have to do the work, you've got to prepare, you've got to meet deadlines, and you've got to keep yourself up to date with the law. So I think work-life balance is the major challenge. Did I overcome it? I don't think so.
We'll see, is the answer, I suppose.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lord Stevens, for your time. It's been an honor to speak with you and see how your journey started at UOM and how you've progressed.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Amy. Much enjoyed the opportunity of speaking to you, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.